Here is something most people will never admit to themselves. The more you talk, listen, the more you explain, the less they respect you. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. This isn't a communication tip. This isn't advice about being mysterious or playing games. This is a fundamental law of human nature, one that has governed courts, boardrooms, and social hierarchies for thousands of years. And most people are violating it every single day, completely unaware of the damage they are doing to their own position. Think about the people in your life who command the most respect. The ones who, when they enter a room, something shifts. People lean in. Conversations slow down. There is a gravity to them that is almost impossible to explain. Now ask yourself, are these people the loudest in the room? Are they the ones constantly sharing their opinions, oversharing their emotions, texting back instantly, always available, always accommodating? They are not. And that is not a coincidence. That is strategy. What you are about to hear will make you question nearly every social habit you have built. And, more importantly, it will show you the precise psychological mechanisms through which silence, restraint, and selective presence create something that endless effort and endless words never can: power. There is a trap that catches nearly everyone, and it is built from the most ordinary behaviors imaginable. You respond to every message immediately. You explain your decisions without being asked. You are always there, always reachable, always willing, always accommodating. You think this makes you reliable. You think this makes you likable. You think it demonstrates your value. The truth is, it does the opposite. Human psychology does not operate the way we wish it would. People do not consciously register your constant availability and think, this person is generous with their time. I should appreciate them more. What happens instead is far more instinctual, far more animal. The mind registers scarcity as value and abundance as expendability. When you are always there, the unconscious verdict is simple. You have nowhere else to be, and that verdict spreads. It spreads to how people think about your time, your opinions, your affection, your loyalty. Once you become a permanent fixture, always present, always responsive, you shift from being desired to being assumed. And what is assumed is never truly valued. Most people never realize that their eagerness to connect is, paradoxically, the very thing eroding the connections they're trying to build. They give and give and give, their time, their attention, their energy, and then wonder why respect keeps quietly walking out the door. This is not about being cold. It is not about punishing people with your absence. It is about understanding a force that operates beneath the level of consciousness, in everyone around you, every day, and learning to work with it rather than against it. Consider water and diamonds. Water sustains life. Without it, you are dead in 3 days. Diamonds are decorative rocks. They have no biological function, no survival value. And yet, for centuries, human beings have traded fortunes for diamonds while treating water as an afterthought. This is not irrationality. This is the economics of scarcity operating exactly as it always has. The value of any commodity, any object, any experience, any person is not determined solely by its intrinsic worth. It is determined by its perceived availability. Restrict the supply and demand rises almost automatically, almost involuntarily. Flood the market and prices collapse, regardless of quality. The luxury industry has understood this for centuries. The great fashion houses of Europe do not simply make expensive products. They manufacture scarcity. They produce limited quantities. They create wait lists. They make their clientele wait, sometimes for years, for the privilege of spending money. And the waiting does not diminish desire. It amplifies it. The object becomes more coveted precisely because it cannot be easily obtained. This is not manipulation. This is the architecture of human desire, and it operates with the same reliability as gravity. Now apply this same principle to yourself, to your presence, to your words, to your attention. Every time you speak unnecessarily, you dilute the impact of everything you say. Every time you are unconditionally available, you drive down the perceived value of your availability. You are, without realizing it, flooding your own market. The person who speaks rarely commands attention when they do speak. The person who is not always reachable is the one whose call people pick up. The person who does not give their time freely is the one whose time others consider worth having. Scarcity is not a trick. It is a mirror held up to human nature, and what it reflects, consistently and without exception, is this: rarity is the foundation of value. Now we need to talk about something that most people find uncomfortable to confront. Beneath the over-explaining, the constant availability, the compulsive need to fill silence, there is almost always a single underlying drive: the need for approval. Most people live their entire lives as approval-seeking machines. Every social interaction runs through a filter. Do they like me? Did I say the right thing? Are they upset with me? Should I clarify what I meant? This filter is so deeply embedded, so automatic, that most people experience it not as need but as normalcy. They don't recognize it as a compulsion. They simply think they are being kind, communicative, considerate. But watch what this compulsion does to your status in every room you enter. When you seek approval, you transfer power. You place the other person in the role of judge and yourself in the role of defendant. Every explanation you volunteer, every anxious follow-up message, every eagerness to please. These are not signs of humility. They are confessions of insecurity, and people around you read them fluently. Even if they cannot name what they're reading, the most dominant individuals in any social ecosystem are not the most liked. They are the most self-contained. They do not explain their choices unless compelled. They do not scramble to repair perception after every interaction. They carry with them what the ancient Stoics would have recognized as an internal locus of approval, a standard they answer to that exists entirely within themselves. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the performance of confidence for an audience. What we are describing is something quieter and far more powerful: genuine indifference to whether or not the audience is impressed. The moment you stop needing their approval is the moment, paradoxically, you begin to earn their respect. Throughout history, the most effective leaders understood something about presence that most people still have not grasped. Napoleon was deliberately inaccessible to all but his closest generals. The Sun King, Louis XIV, constructed Versailles partly as a machine for controlling access. Proximity to the king was the ultimate currency of power, and that currency held its value precisely because it was rationed. Elizabeth I of England was famously guarded in her movements, her private counsel, her expressions of favor. The aura of majesty requires distance. Collapse the distance, and the majesty collapses with it. This principle did not vanish with the age of monarchy. It simply migrated. Today's most influential individuals, in business, in culture, in social hierarchies, operate on the same underlying logic. The executive who does not attend every meeting, the creator who does not respond to every comment, the person in your life who is warm when present but genuinely unavailable when they are not, and who never explains why. Absence creates a vacuum, and vacuums demand to be filled. When you remove your presence, people begin to fill that space with imagination. They wonder, they speculate, they remember. In your absence, you occupy more mental real estate than you ever could by staying constantly visible. There is a reason why the people we most want to see are the ones we see least often. There is a reason why distance, real or perceived, rekindles desire in relationships that familiarity has begun to numb. Proximity breeds contempt not because closeness is inherently bad, but because unearned closeness removes the psychological tension that makes connection feel meaningful. Guard your presence. Make it a privilege. Not as a performance, but because you understand at a fundamental level that your time and attention are among the most valuable things you possess. Treat them that way, and others will follow your lead. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, built entire philosophical systems around a single revolutionary insight that the only true power a human being possesses is sovereignty over their own inner state. Everything external, reputation, wealth, the opinions of others, the outcomes of events. These were beyond control and therefore, in the Stoic framework, beneath concern. What remained within your absolute dominion was this: how you respond. What you feel on the inside, and what you choose to reveal on the outside. This was not a philosophy of suppression. The Stoics did not advocate for emotional numbness. They advocated for emotional mastery, the ability to experience an emotion without being commanded by it, to feel anger without performing it, to feel desire without being enslaved by it, to feel fear without retreating from it. In the economy of social power, nothing is more disruptive than reactivity. The person who flares up at criticism, who visibly crumbles under pressure, who celebrates too loudly or grieves too publicly, this person has handed their nervous system to the crowd. Every strong emotion becomes a lever that others, consciously or not, learn to pull. The person who remains composed, not cold but composed, is unreadable. And what is unreadable cannot be manipulated. What cannot be manipulated holds its ground. Understand that emotional restraint is not weakness disguised as strength. It is the opposite. It takes an extraordinary interior life to face provocation and choose silence. To receive bad news and respond with measured calm. To be insulted and not take the bait. These are not passive acts. They are acts of profound self-possession, and self-possession, in every arena of human interaction, is the bedrock upon which real power is built. Most people think a boundary is a wall. They think setting limits is an act of aggression, of selfishness, something that will push people away and damage relationships. Human nature works differently than you think. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They communicate to the world exactly how you see yourself, what you will accept, what you will not, and what it costs to have access to you. And people calibrate their treatment of you almost entirely based on this signal. When you have no limits, when you absorb every imposition without complaint, when you contort yourself to accommodate whatever others require, you communicate something very specific. I do not have a high opinion of my own worth. People receive that message and act accordingly. They take more. They appreciate less. They begin, almost involuntarily, to treat you with the same disregard you demonstrate for yourself. The single word "no," delivered calmly, without apology, without a paragraph of justification, is one of the most powerful social instruments available to you. It signals that your time has weight, that your energy is not infinite, that you have considered this request and found it outside the terms you have set for your own life. Notice how you feel in the presence of someone who declines gracefully and unapologetically. There is no anger. There is, in most cases, a quiet respect. The refusal itself communicates self-respect, and self-respect is contagious. It elevates not just the person who carries it, but the entire interaction. Stop negotiating your own value. Stop apologizing for the standards you hold. The quality of your life is determined, above all else, by what you are willing to refuse. Every luxury brand in the world operates on one foundational principle, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the product. It has to do with selectivity. The great auction houses do not bid on everything. The finest restaurants in the world maintain short menus, not because they cannot cook more dishes, but because selectivity is the message. The most sought-after professionals in any field turn down more work than they accept. Not because they are arrogant, but because their standards create the very scarcity that makes their acceptance mean something. You are, whether you have thought about it this way or not, a brand. You are broadcasting a signal at all times about the standards you hold, the company you keep, the things you tolerate, the energy you allow into your life. Most people broadcast this signal carelessly, unconsciously, and then wonder why the world does not seem to treat them the way they deserve. The luxury mindset is not about money. It is not about status symbols or superficial markers of success. It is about understanding that exclusivity, genuine, internalized exclusivity, changes how you are perceived at every level. Be selective about your time. Be selective about your circle. Be selective about the conversations you engage in, the battles you enter, the causes you lend your name to. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because your attention is finite, your energy is finite, and how you allocate them sends a message to the world about what you believe yourself to be worth. Rise the standard, then hold it. The world will adjust. The single greatest source of leverage in any negotiation, in business, in relationships, in life, is the credible ability to walk away, not the threat of walking away, not the performance of indifference. The genuine, internalized readiness to leave the table if the terms are not right. Most people enter negotiations, conversations, and relationships already attached to a specific outcome. They need the deal. They need the approval. They need the relationship to work. And that need, that attachment, is visible, even when they are trying to conceal it. The other party can feel it, even if they cannot name it. And the moment your counterpart senses your attachment, your leverage evaporates. The negotiator who can genuinely walk away gets better terms. Not always immediately. Sometimes the other side calls the bluff. But over time, across repeated interactions, the person who is not desperate always outperforms the person who is. The employer who knows you have other options treats you differently than the employer who senses you are clinging. The partner who knows you have standards treats you differently than the one who knows you will accept anything. Non-neediness is not about being emotionally unavailable. It is not about refusing to care. You can care deeply while remaining unattached to a specific outcome. These are not contradictory positions. The person who loves deeply but does not need the relationship to survive retains something the person consumed by need has surrendered: self-sovereignty. Practice this concretely. In your next negotiation, identify your walk-away point before you enter the room, and be honest with yourself about whether you are truly prepared to honor it. In your next difficult relationship dynamic, ask yourself, am I here because this is genuinely good for me, or because I am afraid of the absence? In your next professional decision, ask, am I taking this because it moves me forward, or because I am too attached to the safety of a yes? The walk-away is not a power move. It is a truth test, and passing it changes everything. Everything we have covered in this video traces back to a single unified principle. The world does not give you what you deserve. It gives you what you signal you expect. If you signal that you are available at all times, the world will consume your availability without gratitude. If you signal that your approval can be purchased cheaply, with a little attention, a little validation, the world will keep the price exactly that low. If you signal through your words, your reactions, your willingness to explain and justify and over-communicate that you are uncertain of your own worth, the world will confirm that uncertainty back to you again and again in every interaction. But if you change the signal, if you begin to operate from a position of genuine self-containment, selective presence, emotional sovereignty, and unwavering standards, something shifts. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, cumulatively, the world recalibrates around the new signal you are broadcasting. People begin to notice what they cannot quite name. There is something about this person, something different, something worth paying attention to. This is not a trick. You cannot fake it. The half-hearted attempt at mystery, the performed indifference, the manufactured silence, these are read immediately for what they are. The only version of this that works is the real version, the one forged through genuine self-knowledge, genuine discipline, and the genuine decision to hold yourself to a standard that the world did not set for you. The most powerful men and women throughout history were not the ones who spoke the most, gave the most, or needed the most. They were the ones who understood that restraint is a form of intelligence, that silence is a form of strength, that the willingness to be misunderstood, to be underestimated, to walk away without explanation, these are not losses. They are the quiet, patient accumulation of power that others, caught in the noise, can never build. Guard your words, guard your presence, guard your standards, and remember this: the river that flows everywhere waters nothing. If this way of thinking resonates with you, If you want more deep dives into power, psychology, and the strategic mindset that separates the exceptional from the ordinary, subscribe and follow along. We go deeper every week.